More workers joined teachers in Colombia on the second day of their 48-hour strike against rising violence. Evo Morales condemns the decision to bar him from standing for the Senate. He says the Bolivian right is afraid of democracy. And polls closed in Iran's parliamentary elections. Voting was extended for 2 hours because of the turnout. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Truck drivers have joined students and teachers in Colombia on the second day of their national strike against growing paramilitary violence. The drivers are protesting against the traffic restrictions recently imposed by the government in Bogota, which mean that only trucks have been in use for less than 20 years can circulate. The measures are imposed to have environmental objectives, but they also threaten truckers' livelihoods. The teacher union called the strike to demand guarantees against the murders and threats faced by its members. Our correspondent Hernán Tobán has been with the protesters in Bogota.
We are here at one of the protests where they are condemning the murders, threats and harassment against teachers and other social movement leaders in Colombia. This year alone, at least 50 social and community leaders have been killed. Other trade unions are also joining this protest to call for the government's labor and pension reforms to be dropped because of the impact they will have on workers. Protests like this one are taking place around the country.
More than 350,000 teachers in Colombia left their classes to take to the streets rejecting the threats and harassment by paramilitary groups. Since the start of the year, 240 teachers have been threatened.
Between 1986 and 2016, around 1,160 teachers have been murdered. We have 78 teachers who are missing and more than 3,500 displaced, exiled, or that had to leave their jobs because the state hasn't guaranteed their security.
We, the teachers of Colombia, are being murdered. They have harassed us, threatened us, and put our lives at risk.
This year alone, 2 teachers were murdered. On top of that, teachers are facing stigmatization by the government of President Ivan Duque, accusing them of being close to the insurgent groups. The teachers say this puts their lives at an even higher risk.
We are a military objective. We shouldn't be. Education should be the sector that promotes change and social balance. They don't understand this. We have a banner that says, the best investment to achieve peace is to invest in education. They shouldn't take away our freedom to teach and our autonomy. In a democratic country, a better education should be promoted.
With protests, dances, and placards, teachers called on the government to ensure security guarantees while they work, especially in those departments where they have to deal with the armed conflict, and also to improve education resources.
We go now to Argentina, where former President of Bolivia, Evo Morales, has condemned the decision by the Bolivian electoral authorities to ban him from standing for a seat in the Senate. Evo Morales held a press conference in Buenos Aires alongside his attorneys Gustavo Ferreira and Raúl Zaffaroni. He called the decision by the Supreme Electoral Court an attack against democracy. Other leaders of the movement towards socialism have expressed concern about the influence exerted on the Electoral Court by the right-wing candidates Luis Fernando Camacho, Carlos Mesa, and Yanine Añez, who appointed Salvador Romero to head the Electoral Board. Morales said the right is afraid of democracy.
That last year, on October 20th, we won the first round of elections. The real fraud was the OAS report, and all of the organizations, universities, just show that there was no fraud in Bolivia. They just took my triumph away. We won. We won the elections.
Me obliga a no ser candidato en estas elecciones. Yo acepté.
I
Yo
was
soy candidato.
compelled to participate in these elections, and I did, and I accepted.
Ilegal e
They
inconstitucional
approved
porque
an
hay una
inconstitution
sentencia
and
constitucional que
illegal
me
law
habilita como candidato a presidente si fueran nuevas elecciones.
that wouldn't allow me to be a president.
Acepto todo por Bolivia.
But I
ahora?
accept to be a candidate for Bolivia. But now
Me inhabilitan como candidato a senador.
I am not able to be a candidate for the Senate.
Constitucional.
They don't respect any sentence, not even the constitutional law.
Es otro error jurídico.
This is a judicial mistake.
Esa inhabilitación a Evo, en especial, es un atentado a la
This is an
democracia. ¿O
attempt
tienen miedo a la
against
democracia
democracy. Or are they afraid of democracy at the end?
Evo Morales also said this was similar to what happened in 2002 when the government expelled him from Congress on instructions from the United States.
Esto es lo que está pasando.
And this is what's happening
Otra vez
once
se
again.
repita la historia.
History is repeating itself.
Solo quiero decir brevemente, hermano la prensa,
And I only want to say, brothers of the press,
este movimiento político
this political movement
es más representa los movimientos sociales.
represents the social
distintos
movements
sectores de
of
regiones del
all
país.
of the sectors and regions
En corto tiempo
of my
hicimos
country.
mucho cambio.
And in a short time, we were able to make changes.
Que la política es una ciencia de servicio.
We understand that
Esfuerzo de compromiso.
politics is a science of service and sacrifice for the people, and it's for the most humble. That has been our policy always.
Hicimos tantos cambios
We made so many changes.
históricos,
They were all historical.
porque en algún momento dije en una conferencia,
Like I
porque
said
no
once in a
hicieron en
conference,
180 años,
what wasn't done in
hicimos más
180
que en
years,
180 años, casi en 14 años,
we did it all in 14
con
years.
todos los datos.
We have all of the statistics.
Lamento mucho no atender todos los pedidos de conferencia en servicios, hermanas y hermanos.
I really regret I'm not
Sino
able
atenderlo poco a poco para
to go
escuchar
to all of the
detalladamente
press conference I'm called to and to interviews that I'm
Empezamos
called
con la
to.
política de austeridad.
But okay, we began with austerity policy. When we came to government 2005,
El
2006,
presidente ganaba como 40,000 bolivianos.
when the president earned 40,000 bolivianos,
Mi sueldo a 15,000 bolivianos. Y
I
todos
diminished
los
my salary to
servidores
15
ganaban menos de 15,000 bolivianos.
bolivianos, and all of my servants also, they
Todos los recursos económicos
they
invertimos
diminished
en-
their income.
Morales' attorney and former Supreme Court judge in Argentina, Gustavo Ferreira, said that local and international law supports Evo's right to be a candidate.
The Bolivian constitutional law
propicia la candidatura a senador de Evo Morales.
fosters the candidacy of Evo Morales. The international rights of human rights stimulate the candidacy of
Lo dicen
Evo
las normas
Morales.
vigentes de la Constitución boliviana.
The Constitution of Bolivia also ratifies
Lo
this.
dice la Declaración Universal de los
The
Derechos Humanos.
Universal
Lo dice el
Declaration of
Comité de
Human
Derechos
Rights,
Humanos de las Naciones Unidas.
also
Lo
the
viene diciendo
Committee
la
of Human
Corte
Rights
Interamericana
of
de
United
Derechos Humanos
Nations.
en su jurisprudencia pacífica en materia de apertura
The International
a las
Court
candidaturas electorales
of Human
y
Rights
cerrar por completo todo
also
lo que debe ser
ratifies
limitado
this.
por restricción.
And when it speaks about the electoral rights, it has all the electoral tribunal of Bolivia has ratified this. So we have more than enough arguments. However, in a new act of irrationality that is just one more in all of the chain of events, this is a new blow on democracy. We have advised Evo Morales to go to all national and international organisms to uphold his rights. This is what we have advised him. We have told him to process internally to go forward with a legal process in Bolivia, although we know that the de facto government in this dictatorship and how it will turn out. We also have advised them to put all of the actions, to set forward all of the measures and provisional actions to the inter-American system of human rights. We have also advised them, this because we are convinced that the fight continues.
Our correspondent in Bolivia, Fred Morales, has more.
Right now, leaders of social movements, which are part of the movement towards socialism, are gathered here for a meeting. And just a short while ago, leaders of the political committee of the movement towards socialism met and they announced this is a breach of the constitution and of the political rights of citizens, particularly of leader Evo Morales. They have declared the Mas IPSP in a state of emergency and that they will coordinate the upcoming actions with the social movements to defend democracy. But they have also announced that they would present a criminal claim against the members of the Supreme Electoral Court for having adopted this decision in a manner which they say is absolutely political rather than legal. The leaders of the movement towards socialism are sure that Evo Morales and Diego Party have presented all of the requirements that were asked for and demanded by the Supreme Electoral Court and before the time defined within the calendar of the electoral authorities, before they decided to disqualify them from running as candidates. They say all of this will be presented in the criminal lawsuit against the members of the Supreme Electoral Court. They have also said that the movements which are now meeting will release a statement in the coming hours. We should also mention that one of Evo Morales' attorneys, Raul Zaffaroni of Argentina, who accompanied Evo Morales in a press conference, has said that the date in which this judgment of the Supreme Electoral Court to disqualify Evo Morales and Diego Party is no innocent date. Here in Bolivia, most offices are only functioning until midday. And the carnival festivals begin immediately after, in a way that this decision announced last night has been mediated by the members of the Electoral Court and has been welcomed by all of the right wing which participated in the coup of November 10.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Welcome back. Protests are spreading across the Dominican Republic after last Sunday's local elections were suspended. The protesters want the entire Electoral Board to resign. They are not convinced by the official account of a failure in the automatic voting system, and they say the announcement earlier this Friday that the board was suspending its head of computer services falls well short of their demands.
The plenary of the Supreme Electoral Board decided today to suspend its Director General of Computer Services, Miguel Ángel García, so that the international investigation requested by this body can go ahead in the most objective manner possible.
The protests are now in their sixth day. Our correspondent Daisy Toussaint has the latest from Santo Domingo.
The protests are continuing outside the Central Electoral Board here in Santo Domingo and in other places around the country. They are demanding the resignation of all the full members and alternate members of the Central Electoral Board. These protests began last Sunday, immediately after the local elections were suspended, with just about 40 people present, but they have grown to thousands of protesters across the country. The demonstrators are dressing in black as a sign of mourning, and they are lowering flags to half-mast, for what they say is the death of democracy. On Thursday, the authorities placed security cameras around the Electoral Board offices and removed all the flags from the square in front of the building to prevent the protesters from lowering them. But the demonstrators arrived with dozens of flags of their own, which they proceed to fly at half-mast. The president of the board has replied to the demands for his resignation, saying that only a motion of censure from serious misdemeanors will remove him from his post. 2 people have been killed during these days of protest, and more than 10 have been injured. Although President Danilo Medina called on the population to remain calm, that has not stopped the people from protesting. They continue to demand the removal of the current Electoral Board in order to ensure fair elections. Since yesterday, we have seen the protests extend to the north and south of the country, and today the east and the west are also joining in. And on Saturday, the Dominican community in the United States has called a protest in New York.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's credibility is being rocked indigenous protests, which have prompted solidarity actions from coast to coast in the last 2 weeks. Demonstrations are being held against the construction of a coastal gas-linked pipeline project that will run through Wet'suwet'en territory, displace thousands, and destroy the environment. Activists, land defenders, and allies have blocked railways and police repression. Earlier, we were joined by Yves Saint, a Wet'suwet'en land defender in Toronto, who detailed what's at stake with the building of this pipeline.
A lot of indigenous people depend on the land for hunting, trapping, fishing, medicines. At Unistoten, there's a healing center, and they have different camps where they teach people how to hunt and skin a moose, and they have like fish camps and language camps. And so it's very important that we have and maintain that connection to the land. And it also affects our identity and our language. And so if a pipeline goes destructing through, like, that is generations of healing and tradition and culture lost. And also these pipelines bring thousands of industry men in particular to the territory to work on the pipelines. And so Canada, especially that area in particular, they have a, it's all industry. And so there's a highway called the Highway of Tears, where there's thousands upon thousands of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and men. What we've seen, what I experienced on February 7th, I was at Gidimt'en checkpoint 44, and we had up to 100 RCMP, heavy militarized, snipers in the bushes, TAC teams. They had helicopters flying around us, dropping TAC teams surrounding us. And they just came in really heavy. And I know our relatives to the south, this is what the Indigenous people face and experience, and even to extreme measures where lives are taken. And I stand with you, and I recognize that, and I see you. And just to honor those that have passed doing this work, because that day, like, the thought crossed my mind that I may be shot. I may be shot for standing up for my territory. My father is a hereditary chief of that particular territory that Gidimt'en checkpoint is on. So I felt like I really had a duty to be there among everything that I said that was at stake. Oh, yeah. Especially with the blockades going up. And this is like the mainstream Canada, the mind state of racism, like it's just really sad. And it's hurtful, and it's actually violence towards Indigenous people, because it just keeps on this mindset and this violence. And like I said before, the Canadian government is built on taking from Indigenous people, and also from when settlers first came there, and colonization, the process, that's their mindset of Indigenous people. So that's what we are seeing. It's nothing new. It's always been there. And it was kind of almost not silent. I know people go through it and experience it, but because of social media, now that we are seeing people's true colors.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Lesotho's Premier Thomas Thabane has gone to South Africa, effectively evading a court hearing where he was due to be charged with murdering his ex-wife. Thabane's aide said he left for a routine medical checkup. Police have since warned that an arrest warrant can be issued. The 80-year-old Prime Minister is accused of acting in common purpose in the June 2017 killing of his wife, Lilopelo Thabane, who was gunned down 2 days before he took office. His current wife, Messiah, is considered a co-conspirator and has already been charged with murder.
And as soon as it has been ascertained that indeed he is in South Africa for medical checkup, as it is alleged, well, we shall wait until such a time when she's feeling okay. And the arrangement will, of course, be made that he will appear before the court of law and be formally charged.
Millions of Iranians had been voting to elect members of the country's 290-seat parliament. Voting was extended by 2 hours because of a late rush of voters, according to Iranian TV. These are the first parliamentary elections since the U.S. withdrew from the nuclear deal between Iran and world powers in 2018 and reimposed sanctions against Iran. The election also comes a little over a month after the U.S. assassination of the top Iranian general Qasem Soleimani. Iran's leaders called for a high turnout as they cast their ballots early in the day. President Hassan Rouhani said that Iranian people need a parliament that will address their concerns. And the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei told voters that the elections were the best way to protecting their interests.
What the people want is a more active and energized parliament. A parliament that the people will see fixing their problems in a better way and passing necessary laws quickly.
The truth is that the elections guarantee the country's national interests. Anyone who is interested in securing the country's national interest must participate in the elections. I advise everyone to go with enthusiasm and vote for those who they decided on. And do this as soon as possible, as we always advise not wait till late in the day.
2 days after a racist gunman killed 9 people in Hanau, Germany, worshippers at a local mosque called for more security to protect them from right-wing extremists. Management at the mosque made a call for police to be stationed outside the building just before and during prayer. Worshippers have also blamed the right-wing government for the attack. The government ministers have since promised to put more police at mosques, train stations, airports, and borders to quell public fears.
15 minutes will be enough for people to sit at security there and feel a little more comfortable. This is what we want.
First and foremost, we need more security. We can ban extreme right-wing parties, but there will always be black sheep. We have to be on the lookout, and if we have suspicions, we have to react very quickly.
And finally, Trinidad and Tobago's Carnival has kicked off with the reenactment of the Cambulate riots that started in the capital from 4 a.m. Trinidadians often celebrate the abolition of slavery on August 1st by dancing under a lighted bloomel, which police said was a fire hazard. The people resist and moved the celebration to Carnival wearing masks. British Captain Arthur Baker made a vow to stop Cambulate masquerades and launched an attack in 1881. However, the people fought back and were victorious, giving birth to masks. This year's performance also marked the 50th anniversary of the TNT Black Power movement. And with this, we come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.